Hello everybody, welcome to Casa de Nerd, here we game. I am the Mad Irishman, and this is the beginning of a new series that I'm calling Surviving the First Day. This is going to be, the goal of this is going to be to demystify the game Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead a little bit. Um, if you've been on my YouTube or you've been on my Twitch stream, you know that this is one of my very favorite games of all time, but the game has a very high barrier to entry. So I want to kind of hold your hand a little bit and get you up and running and get you through the first day. So I'm going to do a separate video that has where to get the game and how to make it look a little bit more like mine. So that if you're completely lost and you don't even know where to start, you can start there. Otherwise, if you at least have the game installed and you're just not sure where to begin from there, this will be your starting point. So, first things first, what is Cataclysm? If you have no idea what this game is, the website describes it best. It's Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead is a turn-based survival game set in a post-apocalyptic world. Struggle to survive in a harsh, persistent, procedurally generated environment. Scavenge the remnants of a dead civilization for food, equipment, or if you're lucky, a vehicle with a full tank of gas to get the hell out of Dodge. Fight or defeat or escape from a wide variety of powerful monstrosities, from zombies to giant killer insects to killer robots and things far stranger and deadlier. Um, the TLDR is Zombie Apocalypse Survival Roguelike. If any of that sounds like something you're into, let's push on. So there's a couple of key points that I want to talk about before we get into it. Don't be intimidated. This is a lot of game. There's a ton of mechanics, buttons to memorize, a bunch of different enemies, stats, all that kind of stuff. And you're gonna die. You're gonna die a lot. Don't get too attached to your characters. But you have to understand that with this type of game, there is no win condition. There's no end game. You just try to do a little bit better each time you play. So as long as you accept that and you accept that death is just part of the fun and the learning experience, you'll be much happier. You'll be able to enjoy this game. The other one is don't let other people influence the way you play. Some people like to play this game in a very hardcore, rigid fashion, and that's fine. Some people like to do role playing and use it for storytelling and story generation. Other people like just to explore. Some people like the base building aspect. All of those are just fine. Play the way that suits you best, and don't let anybody tell you that you have to play a certain way or you're doing it wrong, because that makes them a gatekeeping jerk, and we don't do that here. So play the way that you want to play. Even if I tell you to do something and you're like, no, I don't want to do that, I'm not going to be mad at you for not doing it. Do what you want. Okay. So, with that being said, I do have a different font installed to make it easier on the encoding for YouTube and Twitch. If you're interested in getting that font installed, that'll be in a different video, but I'm going to bring you into some options here, and we're just going to go through a couple of these for things that you should have turned on. And there's a lot of options in here. I'm going to point out the important ones, is basically what we're going down to here. So this one, right off the bat, you can have this disabled. We'll turn that on maybe a little later. Safe mode. This one's really important. Safe mode is what pauses the game when you see an enemy, essentially. If you're new, you're definitely going to want this on, because it's really easy to get sucked into what you're doing and then not realize all of a sudden that there's a Zed 10 feet away from you and you're about to get your face eaten. So make sure you leave this on. You can monkey with the amount of turns to remember monsters you ignore. This is the max. That's where I leave it at. Your mileage may vary. Autosave, always make sure you have this on. The game being in quote-unquote early access, beta, whatever you want to call it, it's not perfect. It's going to crash from time to time. 5 minutes between autosaves is pretty reasonable. Sound pack, the game does not come with, oops, oh my goodness, the game does not come with a sound pack by default. This is kind of an, I guess, an add-on. I'll cover how to get one of these in the other video. Your units of measurement, be they imperial, metric, or a mix, can all be set right here. Your mileage is going to vary depending on where you're from, what you're comfortable with, but just so you know that this is here. The rest of this, you don't have to mess with any of this. Graphics, I do change my terminal height and width to match my screen that I'm playing on. If you see at the top, the window will be 2556 pixels wide. 2560 is my monitor, but those are the two options there. And then 1440, I play on a 2K monitor. So this is where you'll adjust that. I did make the fonts pretty significantly bigger than they normally are. These are the settings I like to use. You're probably just going to have to come in here and play with them until you find something you like, but if this looks good, you can go with this. Tile sets, unless you want to play with the original ASCII art, I definitely recommend that you use a tile set. It's going to make seeing things a lot easier. The kind of default tile set for this version of the game is Ultica. There are other ones out there, some better, some worse. It's going to be kind of up to you to decide what you like, but this does come baked into the game, so you can come right in here without making any modifications and choose this tile set, and it'll look exactly like I have mine. The pixel minimap is very helpful, but that's another one where it's just going to be kind of, your mileage might vary. This is how I have mine set up, so if you like what you see, this is how you want to do it. World defaults, I recommend for your first time playing, keep. Just because if you die, but maybe you like that world, you like that starting point, whatever, you can play multiple characters in the same world and maybe even find your corpse, get some of your stuff back. It's a little less roguelike-y at that point, but again, do what makes you happy. Don't let anybody tell you that you have to delete the world every time you die and start a new world every time. I would also recommend changing this to multi-pool. Because it's going to help you, it's going to force you into building a more well-rounded character. And then debug, if you want to make stronger characters right off the bat, you can change your initial stat points and skill points and traits and so forth. Skill rust, I would recommend leaving off. That's if you want a more hardcore experience later, you can turn that on. So those are the options as I see them. Next thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to build a world. We go to world and we're going to create a new one. It's going to bring you to the mod list. As it sits, you can start the game exactly like this, and it will be just fine. Dark Days Ahead, the core content pack, has a ton of content. It'll take you hours, days, weeks, months to get through what is in the base game. So don't feel like you have to dive into any of this stuff, and in fact, it'll probably be detrimental to do so. The only things that I would say are kind of discretionary. You can use graphical overmap like I always use. I like the way it looks better. And in the description down at the bottom, it says, refer to the README for installation. There are a few steps that go along with it before this will work. I'll cover that in another video. So that was the only one I would recommend doing right off the bat. And you can use the caret keys to scroll to the next. If you want a more quote-unquote pure experience with just regular zombies, you can turn on classic zombies. You could also do no fungal, or you could do no monsters at all and just survive against the wilds. It's completely up to you. The one in here I would definitely recommend leaving on disable NPC needs. You don't want to have to feed and water NPCs when you're trying to learn the game yourself, so definitely do that. I'm going to take out bionic professions. If you want a more RPG-esque experience, you could do stats through kills and skills. This will allow you to gain XP from kills and level your stats up. It's pretty minor, but it is there. And then stats through skills mean if your skills continue to improve, you'll get stat bonuses based on it, which is one of the only ways you can increase stats in the game. And then speedy dex, it just makes a correlation between your dexterity and your speed. I tend to play with these on. I don't think they interrupt the balance of the game too much. Something's going to find a way to kill you one way or another, so you might as well just come to peace with it. If we hit tab, this will bring us to if we want to change any of the defaults we saw in that other menu for this particular world. So yeah, let's do keep, and let's do multi-pool only. And then, jackpot, good name for a world. But we'll do YouTube theories. And that's it. The world's created. There it is. That shows how many characters are in that world. In this case, none. We're going to go over to New Game, Custom Character. We're going to pick the world we just created. It's going to load the files. If you put more mods in, this is going to take longer to load and process. And if some of the mods maybe are a little janky, it might throw some errors there. So just be on the lookout for that. All right, so scenario, just start with evacuee. All the rest of these are for later. These are all different scenarios you can run. Some of them give you points back to spend. Some of them take points away, just depending on the difficulty that it sets. Evacuee is going to be kind of your basic scenario. There's nothing positive or negative about it. If you want to challenge yourself, any of these challenges are pretty difficult, but Really Bad Day is one of the worst. You can see it earns you 8 points. You start infected, drunk, sick, on fire, injured. Like it's exactly what it sounds like. Really Bad Day. Don't start with that one. Evacuee is good. Profession. This is all the stuff that's in the base game. Still scrolling. And these all have different professional skills, traits, equipment they come with, inventory, proficiencies, all sorts of stuff. Most of them cost you skill points because they're going to be better than a basic character. But they might take a little more finesse, where if you just do a survivor, you're guaranteed to come with a messenger bag, a watch, a cell phone, some matches, a pocket knife, a little bit of water. It's going to make your life easier. Just start here. Get a couple runs under your belt. You can start getting crazy with it. Stats. Strength is what you would think it is. It affects your melee damage, but it also affects your HP and your carry weight, so it's a little bit like endurance as well. We have 6 points to play with here, so I'd recommend putting 2 into strength. It also does make you more resistant to disease and poison, so getting infected can absolutely kill you in this game. Having a higher strength will make you slightly more resistant to that. Dexterity enhances actions which require finesse. It's your to hit bonus with melee. It's your penalty against target dodge. It is for your ranged penalty. It's a really important stat. You can see as we put that up, our to hit bonus goes up from 2 to 2.5. Our throwing penalty per target's dodge goes down 3 points, and the ranged penalty goes up 1. 10's a good place for this. Intelligence is used when crafting, installing bionics, interacting with NPCs. It gives you a crafting bonus. It affects your reading time. But at base of 8, it's neither good nor bad. So I tend to leave this right where it is. But as it goes up, you can see our read times go up, or go down rather. Crafting bonus goes up, etc., etc. But this is good to leave at 8. Perception is very important for a couple of reasons. One, it affects your aim with ranged weapons, but it also detects traps, other things of interest, and it affects your night vision range. Super duper important. Definitely put some points here, because night vision is going to help you spot Zeds before they see you when you're doing nighttime raids for equipment, which you're going to be doing a lot early in the game. These are all kind of optional traits. You don't have to do any of these, but I'm going to speak to a couple of them that I think are super helpful, especially for your first couple of playthroughs of the game. They might be maybe a little on the cheesy side, but again, this is a very difficult game. You're going to need any help you can get. So the first one we're going to talk about is on the negative side. Addictive Personality makes it easier for you to become addicted to substances and harder to rid yourself of addictions. However, if you just don't take addictive substances, you don't have to worry about this. So this is 2 free points. Lightweight kind of goes along with that. Right here, alcohol and drugs go straight to your head. You suffer the negative effects for longer, but same thing. So if you don't take them, you don't have to worry about it. So that's another free point. We've got Ugly and Truth Teller. These affect your interactions with NPCs. It's entirely possible to go through the entire game without interacting with an NPC at all. So these are 2 free points. Squeamish is a good one. It gives you 1 point, but you can't put on filthy clothing. Now, normally you could put on filthy clothing, say that you took off of a dead Zed, but if you get hit in a location that you have filthy clothing on, it makes you more likely to become infected. And early on, if you don't have access to antibiotics or antiseptic, an infection will kill you. So this makes it so you can't do that. And there's very, very, very few instances where putting on filthy clothing is going to be better for you than just waiting until you wash it. Washing it's easy. You just got to find a little bit of soap and a rag, and you can wash stuff. So it's another free point. Pyromaniac is hit or miss. You have an unhealthy obsession with fire, and you get anxious if you don't light them every now and then. You're going to be lighting fires early on in the game to stay warm and to cook and that kind of stuff. And in fact, throughout most of the game, you're probably going to do this until you get electricity. So this one's not so bad, but if you run out of ways to make fires, you'll start getting negative debuffs, or if you forget about it. So this one, 2 points. You can take it or leave it. Sleepy is worth 1 point. You just have to go to sleep more often. I actually like this one because if you don't take this, you can end up being awake for like 20 hours a day. If you're not doing too much that's wearing you out. It makes it hard to get to sleep, and it screws up if you're trying to make a sleep rotation, like you want to be awake at night and asleep during the day. It makes it a little harder, so Sleepy will help you be able to go to sleep easier. The other one is Heavy Sleeper. Kind of goes along with that. If you fall asleep, you are more likely to stay asleep. So you won't hear things sneaking up on you, but chances are you're not going to be sleeping in a place that isn't, you're not pretty sure is safe. So I think this one's kind of a freebie as well. So that's it for the negatives. There's a bunch of other stuff you can take in here if you're trying to make a very specific type of character. Nomad, you're too adventurous for your own good. The more time you spend somewhere, the unhappier it makes you, so you have to move around a lot. Pacifist, you don't want to use violence. These rigid table manners is another one. As long as you eat at a table, it's not a big deal. You could take that one. I tend not to. Slow healer is pretty good for 2 points, just because you heal at 75% of the normal rate. It's still pretty quick. You can get away with it. There are some other ones in here that make you heal a lot slower, but for a lot more points. But you don't have to worry about any of those. Positive ones. First one we're going to talk about is night vision. Gets you to be able to see further in the dark than most, which also stacks with your perception. So if you have a good perception and night vision, you can see, I think, up to 5 spaces away at night, where most Zeds can only see 2 or 3. So this is huge, huge. Definitely take this one, especially for 2 points. Other ones that I like very much, fleet-footed. Give you a 15% speed bonus on sure footing, lets you get away from Zeds easier without having to expend as much stamina. And running out of stamina is very, very bad. Speaking of stamina, I still don't know how to pronounce this word, but this gives you a 25% bonus to stamina. Super, super great. Quick gives you more action points. This is a turn-based game, technically, even though when you play it quickly, especially, it doesn't feel like a turn-based game, but this gives you more action points in a turn. And then you'll have, if you've done as I have, you'll have 1 point left. I tend to either do animal empathy, which makes aggressive animals less likely to attack you. I hate fighting animals. I'm an animal lover. The other one you could do would be weak scent, so that animals that track you by your scent will do so with more difficulty. Or thick skinned is pretty good for 1 point. You get a slight damage reduction. So that's what I recommend starting with for your traits. You don't have to do any of these. These are all optional, but this is how I tend to rock my games. And then if you have facial hair, regular hair, skin tone that you want, all of this is free. So, you know, I could say that I happen to be a very light-skinned individual. I have short red hair, and then I have a Van Dyke facial hair structure. So, boom. Skills. There's a lot of skills in here, and in fact, with this particular version of the game, there's definitely more than there were in the past, but my suggestion stays the same. You get, when you put 1 point in, we have 2 to spend. When you put 1 point in, you actually get 2 levels of it. The only way to train dodging is to actively dodge enemies, and there's a couple of books, but they're pretty rare. So having dodging to start out, very, very good. The other one I tend to take is mechanics, because to get from mechanics 0 to 1 is pretty difficult without a book. Whereas this, you start at mechanics 2, and it'll let you strip cars for parts like seat belts that you can use for ropes. It's situational, but I think it's pretty helpful. However, you could easily substitute this for, say, melee or unarmed combat, especially if you're going with a trait that gives you a martial arts skill. So that's what I would recommend starting with. You can pick a random name. You could give your character a name. Robbie Gargoyle Hendricks. That's a pretty cool name. Although female with facial hair, maybe not so much. Felix Applin. I always like picking a character that has a nickname like Spot. Weird nickname. Here we go. Sang Punch Coates. We're gonna go with this one. You can also, if you wanted to, change your height, age, blood type. Starting location, leave it alone. It's going to start you in an emergency bunker in varying states of disrepair, but your emergency bunkers are always pretty good to start with. So there we go. We're finished. It's going to build. And here we are. So this has been about 22 minutes, which I think is a good place to stop. Go ahead and get started on your own. You can make the same character, or you could make one slightly different, and then you can kind of play along with me. I'll show you what I tend to do on my first 24 hours in the game to increase my survival skill in the next video. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me. Feel free to like and subscribe if you liked what you saw, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.